Good evening and a very warm welcome to this Founding Fuel Ask Me Anything session on AI and how to make it a part of your lives. We've got two lovely, great speakers with us today to take all the questions that you've sent us already as an audience. This session was kind of sparked off by a recent story that my colleague Anmol Shrivastava had done at Founding Fuel. There he is. And the suggestion was that it's going to kind of evoke a lot of interest and curiosity, and that this AMA Ask Me Anything session was quite important. And it's proven that way because so many of you have registered for it. And the whole idea is not to get into the technology behind AI, but to keep it very simple, jargon-free, and focus on the user experience rather than what lies behind the AI. That's for another day, for sure. I'll quickly introduce the two of them today, Anmol Shrivastava and Tanuj Bhojwani, both of whom are familiar faces for the Founding Fuel community. Tanuj has written for us in the past. He's a tech entrepreneur and also the co-author of a book which he co-authored with Nandan Nilekani. We'd hosted him back in Jan 2022, and Tanuj, if I remember right. And both he and Nandan had walked us through some of the principles and the ideas behind how to build a better digital hygiene and habit, right? And we'll spend a few minutes on that maybe once Anmol takes it off from here. But as I'd mentioned, Anmol's been with us as part of the Founding Fuel team. He's now in stealth mode, I think, as an entrepreneur. So I won't take too much more time. We've got a very fast-paced conversational session planned, all driven by questions that you very kindly sent to us as an audience. So take it away, Anmol.
Thank you, IG, and welcome to everybody. I think right before we got into this session, I put in the Excel with all the attendees and asked ChatGPT to tell me who are the people we are meeting with today. So so that all of you know, I think around 50% of the people here are registered as senior leadership folks. They are executives, board members, senior management, and the rest 30% are entrepreneurs, and the remaining 20% are mid and entry management professionals. I want to keep this very simple in 4 segments. Segment 1 is, what is the simplest way to start using AI without wasting time? I'll ask Tanuj a few questions. Then we'll move on to segment 2. That is, how do you learn to use AI without feeling overwhelmed? Because clearly there's a generational divide and some of us struggle with it. And third is where we'd use a lot of Tanuj's hat, and maybe I'll also chime in. What do the smartest people do differently with AI? And fourth is, where is AI really headed? Will I be left behind? So Tanuj, I think IG was telling, we hosted you last time in Jan 2022. Nandan was also with you. You had co-authored a book on the art of Bitfulness. And the context back then was a lot digital. And in November, I think 2022, ChatGPT sort of came to the fore, right? Which really sort of brought AI to the fold. So I'd like to start by asking you, if you were to rewrite the book today, would you say anything different?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that we thought would be fairly advanced for casual user or reader, especially around automations, right? Like one of the simple things that I tried for fun is, you know how a lot of people send you, "Hey, how are you?" kind of DMs, but you know that they're actually going to ask you for something after that, right? That "Hey, how are you?" is bait. I for a while put on my WhatsApp the ability to, whenever that kind of a message comes in, it actually says, "Look, I am a bot and I want to know exactly what you want to know," right? Especially unknown groups do this. Now, this would be a life-changing hack even then in 2022, right? Like, you don't want to engage in conversation with somebody where you know you're going to be pulled into something and it's going to be bad, right? So, but what if a bot actually replied and even they knew it was a bot, right? Saying that, this message will not reach Tanuj's inbox till you actually specify very clearly what this is about. And that would save a lot of headache and heartache, right? In the context of the book we were writing there. But that would be a suggestion that would have been wild, that I
Mm,
asked users to implement, your average sort of reader of that book.
mm,
Today, that is
mm,
not far from possibility, right? So I do think,
mm,
yes, it could change a lot,
mm,
mostly around this idea that a lot of the routines and practices that you wanted people to adopt, and that's what you were advocating for. I think you can just sort of give them tools that have those routines or those rituals implemented, right?
mm,
To sort of
mm,
through with the motions. So yeah, the book
mm.
will change a lot today, definitely.
Okay. So I want to dive into the section one. What's the simplest way to start using AI without wasting time? So can you just give one example apart from this? I think you're using this tool to sort of make better messages reach you. But how has in the last say few months or years, what is it that AI has done for you personally, Tanuj? How are
Um,
you using it?
so it's hard that basically whenever I'm starting to do anything at all, it is usually that now I've ingrained in myself the practice to go ask some AI a crucial part of this, right? Starting
Mm,
from if I just have rough sort of ideas about something I want to do, I just put my rough notes down in the most haphazard fashion that you can imagine, right? Like the notes would actually
mm,
something like first I should do X, then Y, then what if this happens? Like I'm just very stream of consciousness, just typing everything that comes into my mind. Um,
mm,
I copy paste that and then I add some
mm,
text above and below saying, look, I'm trying to, let's for example, I'm trying to figure out how to build this thing, right?
mm,
Here are some things I have thought about. I want you to
mm,
elucidate this, make it into a plan that I can then share with my teammates, right? And it
mm,
can then sort of completely like it really gets that shorthand. You would be
mm,
surprised, right? You to another human, you would have to give more instructions, but most of these AIs, you do not need to. The first draft that you get, right, from there
mm,
is a tremendous starting point. It's never going to be complete, it's not going to be accurate, it's not going to be there. But that
mm,
first draft is tremendously helpful in whatever you're doing. One of the things that we had postulated, Nandan and I, when we had to do this event also called the Adbud India event in May. Um,
mm,
One of the things we postulated is that you never have to start from a blank page again. Like that's one of the biggest useful things about AI. For any of us
mm,
who've done anything, make slides, write, do whatever, you know the fear of the blank page, right? The blank
mm,
page is possibility. You can write anything, you can have 10 different directions, you can do whatever. But if you just throw it in the air, you get a starting point. And editing an article, editing a slideshow, editing anything, any document, spreadsheet, code, is a lot easier than to start from scratch and think about it. There are trade-offs. There
mm,
are places where you should be starting from scratch because that is the best way to do what you have to do.
mm,
But for the most part, I think most tasks are benefited by having a bit of a template from which you take off
mm.
and customize rather than having to start from scratch. So I think the way that AI has changed my life is in all of these areas. I no longer start from scratch. This is, I think, the most useful thing for me personally was op-eds. I think for me, because when I used to write,
Mm,
um, turning around like something like an op-ed would still be like, take out at least 3-4 hours in a day, write it fully, then rest, sleep on it, come back the next day, edit, do that. Um, Now I literally have a collection, like I have a custom GPT thing where some of my writing is put in, and I
mm.
just give in a new topic or a new outline and say, write an essay around these ideas, right? Uh,
Okay.
in this style. And I have been more or less satisfied with what comes out. I still edit some of the more longer sentences, but most cases, my time to turn around an op-ed fully end to end has
Mm.
dropped from like 2 days, 1.5, 2 days to something like an hour, right? I just churn it out now like a machine. I don't do it as much anymore, but that's what I've seen myself, like the capability difference in my use case.
Got it. Got it. That's helpful. So I'll start taking some audience questions. So one of the questions, in fact, many people ask this, but Akshat, who's a strategy consultant at Tech Mahindra, asked it. What area should we pick in AI to start our learning journey? And I think this is a lot on the minds of even people who are of the other generation, right? People who are slightly older to us because they struggle. Where do you start with? Um,
Yeah.
so any thoughts, Tanuj?
Yeah. First of all, I am starting to get older myself. So this other generation business, while it is true, and it's not nice.
Mm,
I really don't think age. I think,
mm,
if I may, if you redefine age as how much you've lost your childlike curiosity, then yes, those who are older, who no longer remain curious,
mm,
no longer remain, uh, don't have that desire or intent to experiment and just like somebody tell me what to do, I'll do it. Then you are older,
mm,
in a different generation. But as long as you retain your curiosity, I think it is
mm,
easier than ever to start learning anything in the world, right? And in fact,
mm,
let me start with the original question. How do you start learning AI? Look, it
mm,
really depends on what you're trying to apply it to, right? I think a lot of people naturally have this instinct to say, let me understand the basics of how this technology works. Let me understand what a transformer is, what a large language model is, and so on and so forth. And then I will come around to, figuring out what I can do with AI or what I should do in AI. I don't think that's a good idea. If I mean, that's good for your curiosity. You should do it if you want to understand, but it's not
mm,
a good or a necessary condition for you to make the most of AI in your life.
mm,
I think the most important thing for you to do is to ask yourself. So two things. One is just some practice. Just get out there, and every time you have a problem, just try doing it on ChatGPT, DeepSeek. There are tons of these. I would personally say you don't need to stray very far from OpenAI, ChatGPT, Claude, Anthropic, DeepSeek are one. And if you have the ability to run it locally, then even Llama models or Quen models,
mm,
QWE, are good enough.
mm,
I bought a server so I can run experiments, for myself here, and then I use a lot of local models here. But even then, today, my first port of call is usually ChatGPT. It's usually OpenAI.
mm,
That's what I'm doing. It's good enough. Don't worry too much about the difference between models. There is a whole um, industry trying to fight for micro differences between, I can do this obscure
mm,
benchmark better than yours. But for you as an end day-to-day user, it will probably not matter. Once it does
mm,
start mattering, by the time you will know enough to know which model you should fine tune or work with better. If
mm,
from practical day-to-day use, just stick with one of these, pay the subscription if you have to, and continue trying to use it every day in every problem that you have. One
mm,
good bet would be to go past and look, if you have saved your search history, to go look at your
mm,
own search history, right? Just go
mm,
through. Whenever you're not trying to find something very simple, right? Like give me
mm,
phone for this or address for that. For every other kind of query,
mm,
what you type in the Google search box, zoom out and try to ask, what was I really trying to do here? What
mm,
led me to ask this search question, right? And
mm,
that super problem that you had, which led you to do Google search, can you take that problem and put it into ChatGPT or something like that and see what output it gave you, right? And experiment, like keep iterating on that till you start understanding what useful outputs a model could give you. This is familiarization. This is just you testing the waters of what these models are capable of. You will be surprised. Your estimates will both be are likely to be, if you don't use them very often, both superlative, like you imagine these things can do more than they can, and also in some cases you'll be undermining, like you will not guess that these things are so good at doing this specific thing. This is a very hard skill to judge on which domains will an AI perform better than expected and in which domains it will perform worse than expected. One simple rule of thumb is how popular or frequent is this on the internet, because that's what they're trained on. And two, the other heuristic would be how deterministically correct can this be? Like, can somebody write a program that verifies the output of this? So on code and math, for example, they are now starting to write these verifiers. So these models are starting to get better at those two areas. But in general, if something is very frequently known, like, write a template to like leave letter, right? I don't want to sit
mm,
down and leave letter, just do that. I recently wrote an airline refund letter. I just wrote what I wanted and it sort of gave me a perfect letter and I copy pasted. So these are sort of the heuristics to figure out roughly but there is no substitute for trying it yourself. So once you have immersion, once you know what these models are capable of, then you can get into the next step, which is how do you become a regular user or practitioner of these technologies. I'll pause here, Anmol, to get reaction.
That's great. So, Akshat, I think what Tanuj is saying and what I would also say is just start. Just go into ChatGPT or somewhere and just start. Don't think about it. And I don't know if you got a chance to see my article, but therein I mentioned that on the first day we were riding the bike, we didn't worry about many things. We just sat on the bike and rode it. So I would say anybody who's wondering where to start, I think what Tanuj is saying, uh, you just go and figure out one use case and work towards it. So Tanuj, I think there are a lot of other questions. I think there's one by Anjan Kaur, who's the founder of ZOE, then Dhaval Kunt, who's an executive at Quick Supply Chain Private Limited, and Tripti Sharma, who's a coach at Vardhante Catalyst, and they are looking at, five, six great examples of tools, etc., which they can use. So can we, like, in 60 seconds or so, very quickly give a flavor of something which you are using or which you would recommend people to try out?
I use Super Whisper a lot. Basically, I've realized that now technology has gotten. Super Whisper is voice speech recognition, but you can also
Mm,
it adds a little bit of intelligence at the end of that. So it's not just transcribing what you say; it can format
mm,
that out into a specific format, right?
mm,
So let's say if I give a free flowing set of instructions in my head, so I press this button and I say, "Oh, Asif, you should do X, Y, Z, and Kavya needs to do X, and Sriram does this. Oh, and by the way, Asif also needs to do X, right?" I say it in that format, it formats it into, very neatly labeled in the format that I've supplied. Asif, task one, task two, task three, Kavya, task one, task
mm,
two, so on and so forth, which I can then just send off, right, in a message or a group message or whatever. You'll be surprised how many such use cases you can come up with where you just press a button and use your voice to get a exactly formatted text. One version of this is also called Granola, which is for meeting recordings, which I use for the same reason that the notes that it gives are how I like my
mm,
notes, not how somebody else would make them. And
mm,
the third thing I use a lot is essentially image generation. For now, my habit has become Meta AI. Like I am on WhatsApp usually, and that's where I'm sending the image. So I'm generating the images on Meta AI. Um, what else is a good AI tool? I think which this will come up later, hopefully. Zapier. Zapier is a if this then that kind of platform, but they've created a Zap crafting thing with AI. Very often, when I figure out, okay, this is something that I should solve with an automation once and for all, I usually go to Zapier and just type it up, and it's done. Right, half the things. And we'll come to this later, but this is Zapier is would probably be one of my sort of underrated AI tools. Outside of that, there's a lot of one-off things that I use for music generation, Suno, for yeah, I think these are mostly the sort of my go-tos. But surprising amount just happens in ChatGPT, right? Or in Claude, depending on what you're trying to do.
perfect. And I think you already answered the next set of questions which have come in somewhere in between, that which are the chatbots or Gen AI bots, Copilot, DeepSeek, Claude. And I think your answer was don't worry, just get started.
Yeah.
The difference is very, very little. So I think that those were questions by Gagan Adlaka and Parikshit. So now let's move into the second part, right? I'll come to the third part, which you were alluding to. Like we'll go into a little bit of the deeper things. But how do you start learning these things without getting overwhelmed? Because there's so much happening every day, and you open X, Twitter, LinkedIn, every day a new model is launching. So how does somebody go about? How do we make it easy without people feeling overwhelmed?
Look, there is no way for it to not feel overwhelming. If you are going to sit in front of a fire hose and try to drink it all, and you think that that's what it takes to make sense of it, you will be overwhelmed. There is just no way. Like my X habits have become so terrible. I put a 1 hour time limit. It's the only social network I use, but even that I often hit. Um, and I don't think I'm wasting time. I'm not watching memes or anything. I'm literally just reading AI threads and what people are doing, etc. Uh, there is no way that you will be able to digest all the information in the world. But a good way of focusing is to not read because you think you will be informed by what you read. So not serendipitous reading, but like, goal-based reading, right? So if somebody really or something is really blowing up, save it to your reading list. Most of you will never get back to it. but don't like read it in that moment. Get back, save it to the reading list. But for stuff that you're trying to do, stuff that, let's say you have a project, right? Like I am trying to do XYZ, or like I took up automating my own WhatsApp messages, right? Um, Once you start taking up a project and a goal, you are naturally then searching for information you need, trying out tools that exist in that vicinity, and this starts giving you a very, very solid foundation in really understanding these things and their limits and their abilities, and that transfers more readily than you would imagine, right? Because a lot of the explosion right now are pretty much one or two big ideas, and then a lot of smaller ideas that have been attached to these big ideas that now makes all this effort work. So, so I don't think that you really need to worry so much about what's under the hood. But if you have some sort of a goal, a project during which you're applying this, I think all of it will become clear to you.
Got it. And so, for example, Prakash Nathan is asking, he's a director at KW Management. What is your advice for the next gen, especially those in their teens? What skills do they acquire?
Um, Look, there is a growing fear, just like with bicycles and books and printed books and whatever, that this will make you lose some faculties that people my age and above had, that you will suddenly no longer have. I have a very similar story when I made the mistake of giving the cat once, actually twice, but this once, I went to this interview at IIM Ahmedabad, and the professor looked at my score sheet from year one of IIT, like year one of my undergrad, and said, you seem to have gotten a 6 out of 10 in linear algebra. I said, yes, I have. I mean, that's a statement of fact, right? There's nothing to argue there. And then he says, okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions. I said, okay, what is an idempotent matrix? What is a nilpotent matrix, right? Um, and I messed up, right? Like I said, a square equal to, like I confused a square equal to 0 and I. And and he said, oh, are you sure? And I said, no, I'm not sure. But in any other scenario, in any other context in the world, I would take out my phone, I would Google this, and I will give you the answer in 4 seconds. This question is meaningless, right? Your expectation of me knowing that is meaningless, right? If I could not grok once I read what has come up on my Google search, I cannot understand it and apply it, or it takes me longer, then I'm a bad candidate. But for to ask this question is ridiculous. I did not get in very clearly. I did say this in the interview, and they did not like this answer because we all believe that the way we learn the world, number one, that these people will not learn it because they're using these tools. But what we discount is that the world will shift, right? That the things that we were learned and taught and how we were taught to do them will no longer be as valuable because some of this stuff can be outsourced to our machines, right? Just like calculating math tables or whatever fast is useful. I'm not trying to deny it's not useful, but it's not essential. It is not going to be the difference in your daily driver getting you there. So my advice to the young generation, honestly, I find it like they will get it. They are born with it. They don't have any preconceived notions that they have to get rid of. They don't have any ideas of like templates or expertise that you must follow this. I worry more about the older generation, right? I worry about, if you ask me, all those FedEx scams and people calling you and saying you're under digital arrest. How much worse does it get with AI, right? Like if we are asking this question, we're asking questions, we should be asking questions about the other end. So what should young people do? Very honestly, just do exactly what you're doing. Have fun in college, make a lot of friends, and you all will figure it out faster with each other than we will ever have advice to give you, right?
And exactly on what you said. So, Ram, who's retired, has said that how will it help older people? So, and I think attached to that is how should older people think about going about learning this or integrating this in their lives?
So first thing is, I mean, I just want to make sure that if you know somebody around you who doesn't know about this or whatever, even whether they're young or old or whoever, uh, just familiarize them, because the next big thing is going to be some scam preying on innocents around people who don't understand how voice cloning can happen, etc. So the first thing, if you can do for everybody around you, is just show them what the possibilities are and just immunize them to the idea that just because you hear somebody or it looks like somebody, excuse me, the video looks like someone or audio sounds like someone, that is no longer, you cannot take that for granted. You cannot take that for granted to mean that it is the person that you are used to, right? Second, I do think that so we did this again during a hackathon. This was the WhatsApp automation. We wanted to show what use cases are useful with that. One cool one that we actually did was tech support for your grandparents automated. So if you're, like if somebody is messaging you, say, how do I do this, or what do I do, etc. That's the kind of message that if it directly went to ChatGPT as opposed to a Google search would be much better, because people searching for antivirus on my computer is how all the call center scams that you hear about from the US persecuting Indians. This is how they start, right? People will put some ad on your computer. It will make it say that, oh, you have software, you need antivirus. Click here, you go to the website, they start Googling for these things. The first ads are actually these scam websites. You click on the ad, you get to a scam website. They're on the phone, and then they're getting you to transfer all their money to them, right? So I think a lot of these pertinent answers can come from ChatGPT, etc. As we go further down this rabbit hole, I think um, we're going to reach a stage soon, I believe, where you no longer have mass-produced software, right? Software will become very one is to one. It will become very like I decide what my environment looks like and what software runs on it. And I think this becomes even more crucial for the older generation, because it is very clear to me that the software, the devices, everything we make today is not designed for your silver years, right? They're not designed for your eyesight. They're not designed for your level of understanding. They're not designed for the amount of hesitation you have when you're not familiar with technology, right? There are almost always new technologies designed for that 20 to 35 age group, because that's the people who are making it. So I see that with these tools, you can finally make stuff that really works for you. And I mean, specific questions on what that means, I can help answer, but I really think that we'll start finally getting software that is more inclusive.
Got it. So I'll give some thoughts of my own here. So if first of all, if you're somebody who's a digital immigrant of sorts, right, that you're struggling to adapt this technology, I would say it is okay, because all of us are not good at everything. For example, I'm trying to lose weight the last 2 years and I've been struggling, whereas my friends, I don't know, they are able to get onto these protein shakes, they're able to go to these runs. So I think what is very easy for some people might be difficult for somebody else. But I think starting small and experimenting, Tanuj also alluded a lot to this, would help. Like for example, if you're older and you struggle with technology, I would just go to ChatGPT and say, teach me how to do this. And do take those baby steps. I would say that's one. And even for young people, I think Tanuj alluded a lot to this, that learning how to learn and not relying a lot on knowledge and memory skills, but really getting deep inside what makes something tick might help. So I hope Prakash and we got that answer for you, and Ram, we got that answer for you. So Tanuj, I think this is a segment you'll love. Like, what do the smartest people do differently with AI? So, and there are a lot of questions here. But the first one I would ask is from Shekhar Babu Krishnappa. He's the founder of CIEL Real Estate Private Limited. And he says that considering the quality of the answers from the AI depends on the quality of the questions. So, what strategies can be used to refine questioning techniques and get the most value from AI interactions?
Look, yes, a good prompt helps. A lot of the times, if you really want to get into like really good prompts, you'll have to start structuring them a little better. Like, they basically give very code-like inputs to allow it to know what part is the sort of, these are the conditions, these are the constraints, these are the context, and then this is the expected output. Here is an example, right? So structuring your prompt a little better instead of like being free flow and text, having a little more structure helps. If you're doing something multi-step, then sort of, typically how you end up writing the question or the prompt again ends up being, step one, do this, step two, do this, then like this. And we found even that indentations, just putting spaces and tabs and making it seem more like a program, becomes more useful and more reliable, right? It becomes like at least the outputs are consistent. Having said that, the AI labs themselves are understanding this is a problem. So the people who are giving you like Chat GPT or DeepSeek or Anthropic, are starting to take over this a little bit and making it easier for you, especially now with the newer reasoning set of models, open set of models. All the voodoo that we used to do, think step by step, do this, do that, they've actually gotten rid of it in some sense, because what the model does is uses your input, starts making a plan first, goes back and forth on the plan. When it is satisfied with its own plan, then it executes the plan. Here, there might still be some variability and something that we learn from the prompting. um, but so far, if you ask me, between the output difference that you're really trying to achieve, as a lay user, it doesn't make a difference. If you're doing something in production and you're trying to like get it to work with corner cases also, and you want precision, yes, prompting structures, making it more code-like helps. But here's a third thing, and I want to say this is a general thing that make sure it doesn't get lost. What these things are excellent at is outputting code. So think of it this way, that you have AI, which is, it's not deterministic, it's probabilistic, right? You had certain systems like spell check or whatever, which are also probabilistic, but because they're operating in a very limited context and domain, they're also probabilistic. Your spell check still gets things wrong, like it still says duck you, right? But it is in a narrower context, so it's better. And then there
Mm.
are programs. Programs work 100% reliably, right? Like it's code, it's written, it does exactly what it says. One hack to get reliability, that's why you're asking these prompting questions, is you use AI to write a program, right? And if you ask me, that has been the biggest productivity boost in the last year and a half that I have seen. And also because of the nature of the people who are building AI coding tools and AI coding, is that they are coders themselves. They just have cracked it. They really have made it so easy to output a program to do what you want, that for most tasks that you can't figure out how to do, my suggestion would be to get the AI to write a code that does it for you. And everything about deploying that code, running that code, fixing bugs in that code, the AI can handle. You literally just have to copy paste, copy paste. And if you use a tool like Cursor, you don't need to copy paste anymore.
Got it. So we'll come to the coding part in a bit, but let me take that question on as well. So you're right, Shekhar, that somewhere the quality of questions matters. And as Tanuj said, the AI companies are already working on making it easier. Like some of the voodoo we did with chain of thought or asking it to think step by step is not required anymore. But I still feel like as a starter, what I would do is just imagine that you're in a people full of room with friends, and if you had to figure something out. So for example, last week I wanted to study a little bit about why nuclear plants are not in India. So I would give it that question and say to it that imagine if I'm in this room and there are full of experts, what questions would you ask me? So it will give me a few questions back, and then I would probe that questions again and again to them. So maybe attacking the same problem from a different lens and just thinking that there are more people in the room with you might help you arrive at the good answer, and you need to just experiment a bit. And Tanuj, so you alluded a little bit to this, right? Or largely to it. A lot of people have asked, like, for example, Dali, who's from Footloose No More, they're talking about, can AI coding create an app, front end, back end? I think Dinesh Narayanan, who's just held a masterclass with Founding Fuel, he's the author of a book on RSS and is a prominent contributor. He's asking, is ChatGPT a reliable coder? How does it compare with other GPTs? Um, and a few more other questions as well, where people are asking about the coding capabilities. So you answered a little bit of that, but what would you, if you had to add something?
Look, there is a matter of taste here, right? Like where people prefer certain outputs. I think there are some benchmarks on which people are measuring also. Personally, I've been using Cursor, which defaults to Claude 3.5 Sonnet. And very frankly, I've had no reason to change it. There are only a few times that I was trying to do something very complex that I tried changing it to a O1 and an R1 and see the outputs. And while I was happy, I think nothing made me stick to changing the models. Let me answer your basic question. Are they good at coding? Yes, they're. All of these models now are very good at coding, and a little bit around how they output code and what matters to them, whether the same thing matters to you, is a little bit of taste. But a lot of that can be overcome by giving instructions or like prompt templates, etc. One thing I didn't mention in my previous answer, which I will say again, is that examples really help. If you want something to look a certain way, instead of trying to figure out what to say, right, just throw in a few examples. Here is an example of a good output. Here is an example of a presentation I like. Here is an example that I would want, right? Just throwing in a lot more samples lets the AI figure out for itself what you actually like, right? So this really works for stuff like, say, writing, where you may not appreciate why you like certain kinds of writing, like you don't have the ability to critique it and identify the elements that you like. But if you were to give 3 or 4 examples of the kind of writing you like and say, write me this essay with this outline in the style of these, it will actually do that. And then it will also change the voice or the tone as you would like. You can say, now make it more funny, make it more whatever. So that is one example on the prompting template. On the code, these things are excellent at code. I have gotten back to coding and I have started coding in languages that I have never worked with. So like recently for this WhatsApp thing only, we were using Go, a language that I just have zero familiarity with. I don't even know how it works. I don't know anything about it. And yet I have successfully pushed extensions to a very popular library um, because I am basically going to cursor, describing what I want and pressing tab, like most of the times I'm just like accepting its suggestions. Um, your ability to break down the task that you want into small enough chunks that the coding agent can't get wrong is going to be important. So if you are trying something and the code doesn't work on the first try or doesn't even look like it's close, try breaking down the task a little bit, then a little bit, and then figure out if it can do each one at a time, which usually helps. If you get stuck or if you get an error, copy paste the error and put it into the coding agent again. It will probably solve it for you. It will know how to solve it. These things can get confused when the context windows get very large. So just try to do, like I said, like good project management. Just break it up into chunks that are solid and work on each one independently. And you will find that most of these models are indistinguishable in how they go. Obviously, when I say most of these models, I'm talking about the same class, right? I'm talking about, say, if you're talking an O1, R1, they'll be in the same class. For a 4.0, Sonnet 3.5, these will be in the same class. So they'll give you the same kind of outputs. But in that class, I think if you choose any of the frontier models, you're going to be okay, right? It's going to both cost you the same and going to give you nearly similar outputs. After that, it's a matter of your prompting and a little bit around your taste.
Yeah. So I think Dinesh, in short, as Tanuj said, they are very good coders. In fact, even I'm not a very tech-heavy sort of a person, although I'm an engineer, but I was also able to use its help to put something in. And you need to break it down step by step. For those of you who have not coded or not engineers, I know this might sound a little bit overwhelming for you. So I might just say that you might put an Excel sheet in there and ask it to just give handwritten instructions that can you find out what's happening here, what's happening there before you even think about coding, etc. Because I know it might be very overwhelming. Even those things it is very good at, like working with Excel, and you can do a lot of stuff there that just put in the Excel and query it like a human would, right? And it will give you great answers. Now let's move to
Can
a
I,
next set
Anmol,
of questions.
can I just add one thing?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
if you are here because you want to be sort of aware and try these tools and do this, one thing you must free yourself of is this identity of I am not a coder, right? Like this is advice to all of you. Um, think about it this way. Let's suppose the latest and the greatest information that you needed was in Chinese, right? Somebody tells you this PDF has the answers to whatever problem you have in life. That wouldn't stop you. You would take the Chinese language PDF, you would put it in a LLM or in earlier cases, Google Translate. You will translate and you will get the English and you will try to understand and extract what you had. It will be difficult, it will be uncomfortable. At each point of time, you need a tool to help you understand what's happening. But you would go through it, right? If it's of value to you. Uh, I posit to you that code is no different than just another language. If anything, it is much easier than Chinese because most programming languages are written, like fourth graders, if else then while for, right? Like this is what most programs are. Um, and you have an expert at your disposal who's reading that code and telling you exactly what it does in plain English. right? Which is again ChatGPT or Claude Sonnet or whatever. Eventually, just by seeing all those lines of codes over and over again as you're reading plain English, you will learn coding. I think that the identity, I am not a coder, right? Which was fair, like pre 2022, it would have been a hard skill, and I don't know if the value of learning it would have been worth it. Today, that's not the case. You should look at code. You should throw any code you get into ChatGPT and ask what it does and how it does it and explain it to me, and eventually you will learn coding. So I just want to make sure that the message that I want to underscore is, if you are still making the distinction between I am coder, I am not coder, I am engineer, I am not engineer, you are already lost. Code is going to be a very important go between till these AIs become either supremely capable and reliable. But till that point of time, that wide generalist AI, narrow AI, and programs, right? Programs continue to remain the best way to do things. So if you are not a programmer, I highly suggest you use these tools to become one.
Perfect. That's great. So let's look a little bit of questions which touch on the human element. So Subramani, she's a coach, and she asks, in interventions like coaching and therapy, human touch and in the moment emotional management and empathy are key. Intuition plays an important role as coach partners being fully present. How can AI contribute and complement this relationship between a coach and a coaches? And I'll just add one more question here, although we'll like address both the questions differently. But I think I'm seeing a lot of questions coming on YouTube. Like Vivek Kelkar has written one question: if writing is done by AI that is truly original, even if it is done to conform to a particular style, is it an authentic voice? And will the use of tools Tanuj is talking about actually lead us further and further into a confirmation bias? So I think we'll address these questions separately, but there is a little bit of uh, how do we use it in very human cases, right? We talked about extremely tech code sort of stuff, and I know you said not to make those distinctions, but just to bring that contrast in because the society still looks at it this way. So what should we say first to Subramani?
So, look, I used to be the head of something called People+AI, where you were running a lot of experiments with, what could AI be for good, whatever. AI for good is what people call it. But in general, to me, what was like, what are the use cases that could potentially be population scale in India? Mental health is that, really nice one, where if you haven't, I suggest you talk to an AI once about some personal problem you're going through. You will find that it is patient, it is empathetic, at least whatever it means for those words to in the replies. You just have to make the assumption that maybe there's somebody else typing it there, because what does it mean for an AI to be empathetic? Putting that philosophical question aside, the responses you get are actually fairly good. They are helpful. Um, there is fear that what if through some system manipulation or whatever it starts giving bad answers instead of good answers. And those fears are not unfounded. So would I use AI to replace a therapist? No. But let me give you a very specific scenario on which you are working. In our country of exams, during this summer period, that when the entrance exams are happening, millions of students together get into stress mode, and so do their parents. The total number of therapists we have, counselors we have, will never suffice to uh, manage that peak load, right? Because it's just during that exam period. Even if you hired counselors and trained them and gave them this, what are they doing the rest of the year, right? So they're not going to invest in this. You're not going to have that skill thing. At such a time, would you not say that an AI that is largely empathetic knows roughly what to say, and when it doesn't know, it hands over to an actual human? So it's used more as a triaging solution. Would that not be supremely beneficial? And at least I believe yes, because we will never be able to fit that peak capacity into whatever we do. Would I recommend it for long-term sort of personal mental health? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think it is there yet. I don't think it is something that even I would want to do. But in 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 the sense that just simply expressing your problems to someone helps. Not that the reply is necessarily helpful, but just that fact that I took the time to put down what is wrong with me, and I did it without stigma, without shame, without having to tell people what am I doing. In that sense, this tool has been proving to be very useful. I've seen a lot of people who otherwise would never do anything mental health related, but have spoken to an AI chatbot for the same. So this is sort of my complicated, nuanced answer to say, humane stuff like this, which is figure out where the AI takes away stuff that humans are not good at. Like, for example, we're not good at destigmatizing mental health. We've tried, but it's still not there yet. So can an AI help with that? But something which is, like long-term understanding, empathy, something that only a friend can do, maybe an AI can't do as well. And we shouldn't be encouraging ideas in that space where people start replacing human friendships with AI friendships. Personally, I find that very dystopic, and even if I can't put my finger on why, and I wouldn't encourage society in that direction, right? But dealing with like this peak capacity problem, for sure, we should be doing more of that. That's at least the. Does that answer your question, or do you think?
I think that gives a good flavor. I'll also chime in. So Subramani, I'd really liked your question. So I thought a lot about it. In fact, I plugged your question into ChatGPT as well before coming into this session. So you are absolutely right. Like there is a value on to human intuition, and I mean, if I was receiving therapy, I don't know, I'll still feel more comfortable speaking to a person than an AI. But Tanuj did speak about the fact that AI is doing it really well and maybe to address that scale problem. In fact, I'd read an article where they said that people are preferring speaking to AI over another human being because they feel less judged, they listen more. But coming straight to your question, I think there's a lot you can do to improve yourself as a coach. For example, just a while back, Tanuj spoke about Granola as a software and something else. Maybe with the permission of whoever you are sort of addressing, if you upload that transcript and ask it questions like what were some moments of transitions, right? Or what were some moments where you saw the tone of voice of the person change, maybe it might make you think back about, hey, had you caught that on or had you not caught that on? It might help you as a coach better, right? And maybe if you put all the transcripts in of all the sessions you have had and you ask questions to them like, hey, I'm thinking this is what's happening with this person, what do you think? You might get to test your hypothesis, etc. So there is what this AI is doing is we should not just think of cases where just AI is sort of like the coach or the therapist or the counselor or just a person is. Can they both do it together? Like those are some of the things I thought. Of course, I mean, there are brilliant people out there who would be looking to leverage these tools and do this. So Tanuj, let's speak a little bit also about what Vivek spoke about, right? Like he was saying that somewhere he feels there's a loss of authenticity. Like if something's written by an AI, is it an authentic voice? And I know I'm very sensitive to the time, so I'll just quickly keep it very, very fast.
Yeah.
So Vivek, what I have done personally, and I think Tanuj will also chime in, is I use it to rewrite, right? So the ideas are mine. It rewrites it and it sort of serves the user. So I've never felt an issue with it. But to each their own. Tanuj, what do you think?
Yeah, I think when you actually in the task of creation, right, there are two things. One is you write to think, and one is you write to tell what you think. Right? I think the right
Mm-hmm.
to tell what you think, AI, great. Right to think, anyway, you should be doing it yourself because like the whole value of it is coming from the writing. But a lot of people are nervous about presenting their writing, about presenting their work, about presenting whatever. And I think in those cases, the net value add is great. Am I tired of reading AI slop? Very much. Yes. Do I wish that people stop emailing me with letters that are clearly written by AI? Yes. But I also like want people to stop calling me about loans and selling me property and what. Right? The world doesn't work the way I want it. Right.
Okay, so what about biases? I think Vivek also mentioned that would this lead us further and further into a confirmation bias? I'll just chime in again. I think, see, every tool will come with its pros and cons, and you need to use it in a way that you are solving for that, right? Like if you, that's what I would say. So some cases, in fact, I would feel that it might say that it might give you a fresh idea, but I'll just chime in with something very interesting I read just last week. I don't know, Tanuj, if you have read it, but Ben Thompson had used deep research and he used it to analyze one company. And what happened is in the research, ChatGPT did not even mention the name of a prominent player. And so his point was that somebody who's using this might go back thinking they are knowledgeable, but they're actually not. So there is like an unknown known, right? We had heard of unknown unknowns, known unknowns, but there's an unknown known. So Vivek, I think at the end of it, it is on to us, right? If we completely outsource our thinking and everything else to it, surely you will become a victim of these tools. But there's a lot of leverage as well you can get, so you need to use it in a balanced way. Do you want to add anything, Tanuj, there?
Yeah, bias will happen. These things are trained on
Hmm.
internet data. Already we can see how that works and where it goes. And now the DeepSeek models that were trained with more Chinese data, one of the problems was their reasoning traces were in Chinese. So these models are very much responding to the underlying data. Till the time that we have no control over what data, what training recipe, anything at all, which is essentially all your OpenAI, all these models, you have no idea what you're getting into. Having said that, I think it is still they're still very useful despite all of that. They're still very very useful. Bias should be a reason for you to be cautious, to not slip into not like Anmol was saying, don't take these outputs for granted ever. But you have to start figuring out where it does a good job and use it there, right? So I think that's one thing you have to do, because a lot of places where this bias won't matter, and at least figure it out for that, and then we can see.
Yes. So there's a question from Mona Gupta, who's a director at NHSRC. She asks, is it safe to use ChatGPT? Would the documents we share could they be used by others? And there's another Founding Fuel subscriber, and he's also Alan from Bits. He had just messaged me yesterday, and they do a lot of patent work, and they were really finding ChatGPT useful, but worried that while writing the patent, which is future oriented, right? If you use it, what happens to confidentiality and strategic advantages, etc., etc. So, Tanuj, any thoughts on this?
Um, I can only tell you what they say. I can't tell you what they do, because we know that OpenAI says we don't look at your chats. DeepSeek says we look at your chats, right? What they do, we don't know, because it's not like they delete your chats. We know this from memories and the new Foro update that came, etc., etc. There is a there is a lot of your data sitting on their server, and currently it is only protected by in the meme world, what you would say, trust me bro, right? Like, it is ChatGPT telling you to trust you, right? Trust them. If you really want to not have that, my suggestion is to essentially just get a GPU machine, or even get the latest like M4 Pros or something, and you can run a reasonable sized model locally, where you can have complete control. So my Super Whisper that I use, where I say things a lot,
Hmm.
completely local model. It's worse off than doing it in the cloud, but completely local model, because yeah, I mean, half the time I'm like saying stuff and copy pasting stuff that I don't want there to be a record of. So open source self-deployed models is going to be a thing. I'm literally betting my career on that idea. And to complement that would be that, therefore, soon all your data you would want also to be in that stage. Today we give it away to a Google, to an Apple, to a whoever, Meta. Um, but which was used for tracking or personalized ads, and that time also it was creepy. But the new kind of creepy is really creepy, right? Like, if you give, let's say, just your past chat history or something to an OpenAI, if you've been asking a lot of questions, and you just ask it to say, what do you know about me, it will say things that are surprisingly accurate and frame it in a language that you understand also. And that, I think, makes it creepier. So we are going to head, or at least I hope we are going to head, in a future where you and I want more control over our models and our data. And we are not going to give it away as freely as we did in the last 25 years of the internet, which honestly, or 30 years of the internet, it honestly was absurd when you think about it, as to how much we've let. There are at least two, if not three or four trillion-dollar companies that operate entirely on the principle that our data belongs to them, right? That is the founding sort of principle around their business. And that is going to sound absurd to people in just 10 years' time, is my bet.
Perfect. Yes. And I think just Tanuj answered that beautifully. A couple of things. I think in the enterprise edition, they do claim that they don't train on your data, but I don't know. But they do claim that. And I think if you're worried about it, then you can also write to ChatGPT. I think there is some place where they tell you that they'll delete your data or not use it for training purposes. But yeah, there is a big, larger debate on privacy in this era, which is for sure there. Now, Tanuj, I think we are I think 5 minutes away from time, so I'll move on to the last section, which is where is AI really headed? Will I be left behind? And aligned to this was one of the questions was, will misinformation online increase or decrease with the use of AI? That is by Sachi Mohanty, who's a freelance writer.
Yeah. Use of misinformation is one of my favorite topics, will increase dramatically. Every system that you have for human trust, think about it. A review for a restaurant that was long, details, photos, used to make you feel, okay, this review I can trust and I will listen to their recommendations. Today, generating those kind of reviews are easier, right? And real users who don't use AI actually sound like, hello, 5 star, whatever. So it's going to be very hard to judge that. But here is where it gets worse. You can now generate an entire Reddit say a subreddit or some online site in which you show thousands of users who are fake in actual conversations with each other. And they can go claim something about a product or against a product or whatever, and you will not know the difference because you will think one review is fake. Will you think an entire website is generated fake for the purpose of selling this product? And the amount of effort it takes to do that will become like one 15-year-old spending maybe an hour to generate something like that and put it out on the internet. I already spoke about deep fakes, deep videos. You should see some of the new models, how good they are. It's just scary. So in general, information is going to become worse before it becomes better. The way it becomes better is that we start having authenticity and source control, and there are some standards and protocols to do that. But eventually, right, this is where systems like Aadhaar or digital entity is going to take a very different role. You are going to want the ability to distinguish whether this person is a real person and operating on behalf of one person or a company or whatever. Those identity tools till they come alive, I do not see how we will ever, like, there's no way that you'll have AI detection, right? Like, let me just make it very clear. Whatever AI detection you create, there will be an AI whose job it is to get past that, and they'll be good at it. What you can only have is something that we as humans will have the right incentives to never give away, right? Like, I, Tanuj Bhojwani, don't want to call this thing or give it my ID because then that thing can go ruin my real person human reputation. Unless we set the stakes that high, I don't see how we get out of the deepfake problem. And that's going to require a societal political shift, right? I mean, we're going to have to look at things like Aadhaar, which are very controversial even now, as the only way we get out of this problem, right? Or some equivalent of that. I don't know if you all know, but Sam Altman is also invested in this company, WorldCoin. I think they've changed their name now a couple of times, but they were doing that all
Yeah.
scan thing for exactly this reason, right? Because they can also see it coming. There is no way that you can start trusting information online unless there is a human who stands behind it and says, I am this person and I am saying this information. So that's one. Was there a second part to your question? Sorry, I latched on to that one, but I think it was a part one.
Yeah, I think they were asking about whether the misinformation increases, decreases. But let me ask you, where is AI really headed? Just in like let's say 30 seconds. Yeah.
Anything that you can specify with input output and verify that it exists, like verify the output is correct, those areas AI gets really, 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 really good. Incredibly good, more good than humans are today. And those no longer become, or they are still economically valuable, but not the most economically valuable thing. We become reasoners of long context. We hold in our heads history and culture and other things that you're not able to specify very clearly into a chat window, or whatever the next tool becomes. That is what our job is. But then everything else around, just remember, it's just the history of economics that things that were once valuable, once they become commoditized, the world just moves on. They just make something else of value, right? So to that other
Hmm.
question, authenticity, etc., right? Like, it will become just like today in the age of machine goods, handcrafted things, right? Or at least labels that pretend to be handcrafted are of much more premium value, right? Similarly, outputs generated or things done in a particularly human, high touch, high labor way become that much more of a luxury and that much more desired and that much more valuable. So I don't think we will run out of jobs very soon. Like, I personally don't fear that. I do feel like there'll be a tumultuous 5-10 years while we figure it out and we figure out what the new jobs are. And during that period, I believe the curious will survive, right? Like the curious people who keep trying will find ways of adding value. But yeah, professions definitely do not stay the same anymore, right? Jobs are no longer what they used to be. We value different things, but yeah, I mean that's where I think it's all headed.
Okay, so thanks, Tanuj. I think IG is back, and we couldn't take all the questions, but whatever's left, I'll try answering them on YouTube, Zoom, Founding Fuel's website. And I know, Tanuj, you're very particular with time, but if you can also chime in, that would help. But over to you, IG.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanuj. Thanks, Anmol. This was a terrific session, and we could have gone on, I know, for much longer, but we've been very clear that we should try and wrap this up in a hour, and then perhaps allow people to watch it again. So that's what I wanted to come to, that we will quickly share the recording this to all those who've registered for it, and also share I think a summary very soon, so that you have some of the insights. I loved the last bit, Tanuj, about only the curious will survive. Sounds a bit like Andy Grove.
Yeah,
Yes, you do need to be paranoid and curious now, I think, to survive. But thank you so much for everyone who joined today on a Monday evening. We will carry on with this conversation. Tanuj, Anmol, we'll have you guys back, I'm sure, soon enough, because AI is not going away in a hurry. In fact, if anything, it will get more and more interesting. Thank you so much,
yeah.
and have a great week ahead. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Are you